Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we cut through all the noise and, give you the essential knowledge you need fast. We know you're out there trying to navigate this just constant sea of information, designing campaigns that actually break through, figuring out how to show data so it can't be misunderstood. It's a lot. So today, our mission really is to look at communication strategies that genuinely build audience confidence. We're going deep into campaigns that work because they don't really look like marketing. We'll also cover the really non-negotiable ethics of presenting data and the visual tools that make complex ideas click instantly. Welcome to vpod.ai. The deep dive is sponsored by Stonefly, a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. If you're looking for secure, ransomware-proof storage, then Stonefly sells air-gapped and immutable storage. Contact sales at stonefly.com to schedule a demo.
Absolutely. And the thread tying all this together, it's trust. I mean, success in modern business communication, whether you're crafting some huge creative campaign or, just designing a dashboard for the execs.
Yeah.
It really hinges on making your audience feel understood and critically respected.
It's understood and respected.
Exactly. So that means building two kinds of trust at the same time. There's the emotional trust, right? That comes from a good story.
Yeah.
And then there's the rational trust. That comes from data that's transparent and, truthful.
Okay, let's unpack that emotional trust piece first. B2B breakthroughs, we know the default, right? Often it's just jargon-heavy white papers. But the campaigns that really cut through, they're the ones that deliberately step outside that box. They surprise people.
Yeah, they earn those branding points through subtlety.
So let's look at GE Healthcare. Bit of a risk they took. They produced The Message, this podcast. It was styled like an old school radio play about getting a signal from space. Really high quality, broad appeal. Thought leadership, basically. Yeah. And the GE branding, it was minimal, like almost an afterthought, but it climbed the charts.
And what's crucial there isn't just, they used a podcast. I mean, everyone knows podcasts can be inexpensive, flexible.
Sure.
The real insight is the strategic subtlety. GE managed to shift its whole corporate identity. People stopped thinking just appliances or power generation and started seeing them as leaders in science, in advanced tech. By choosing content about, big scientific exploration, they made this huge kind of impenetrable brand feel relevant, visionary even.
That's a great takeaway. The best branding might come from not hammering the product home. It's more about challenging how people see you, what you actually care about.
We see that same need for balance on social media too.
Yeah.
Think about Capital One. They've got this massive consumer side, right? But also serious B2B interests.
Yeah, tricky mix.
They can just post dense financial reports on Twitter.
Yeah.
But they don't. They stay relevant, keep it conversational. They focus on lighter stuff, timely campaigns, March Madness, travel contests, using bright, bold images, video.
Right. They're sort of translating finance speak, which is usually complex, into something much more conversational, friendly, current.
Exactly. They avoid the heavy technical stuff because social media is fundamentally about that immediate human connection. It's not where you go for deep archival research usually.
So if we pull this thread together, creative consumption, the goal is knowledge, but without the overload.
Precisely. Look at Ciros. Their blog tackles complex B2B topics, but it looks like a creative design magazine. Vivid, simple visuals make dense stuff easier to digest. Or Novartis's beautiful medicine microsite. Takes complex medicinal science, turns it into this immersive, story-driven journey. That elements of surprise, that simplified delivery, it's vital for grabbing that initial attention.
Okay, so we've talked about creativity, building attention, building that emotional trust, but with attention comes responsibility, right? Okay. How do we make sure the data we're presenting is ethical, that it doesn't abuse the trust we just work so hard to earn?
Exactly. This brings us straight to the ethical side of data visualization.
Yeah, because visualization isn't neutral, is it?
Not at all. It's a tool of persuasion. It heavily influences high-stakes decisions, board meetings, government policy, you name it. So we absolutely have to operate with clear ethical principles. Accuracy, fairness, transparency, they're non-negotiable.
So what are those key guardrails? Yeah. The things that keep us on the side of ethical clarity versus, manipulation?
We can break them down into three main areas. First, pretty obviously, accuracy and honesty. You just have to avoid distorting or manipulating the visual truth, even if it's unintentional.
Okay.
Second, fairness and objectivity. This means steering clear of personal bias in how you present things and being really transparent about where the data came from.
Right.
And third, clarity and simplicity. This one's crucial. If a chart is confusing or misleading, Even if the data behind it is sound, it's inherently unethical because it stops people from understanding properly, it hinders good decision-making. We've got to balance the aesthetics with the actual function.
But I sometimes wonder, don't you need some simplification to make a quick point on a dashboard? How powerful are these visualization mistakes, psychologically speaking?
Oh, the effects are huge, often because they tap into our natural cognitive biases. Let's look at the most common ways rational trust gets portrayed. One big one is misleading scaling.
The axis problem.
Exactly. If you don't start your X or Y axis at 0 on a comparison chart, you're playing tricks with how the eye perceives area, like comparing year-over-year revenue. If you start the graph way above 0, a tiny 5% increase can suddenly look like a massive 500% jump.
Wow.
That's the difference between reporting data and actively distorting its magnitude.
Okay, what about the temptation for flashy visuals? We all know that colleague who loves chart junk.
Yes, the classic mistake of using inaccurate visual elements. Everyone thinks 3D charts look cool, right? But they are fundamentally deceptive. Two fatal flaws. One is occlusion elements blocking each other so you can't see the real values. The other is false hierarchies. The thing in the foreground looks bigger or more important just because it's closer. There was this example with Amazon's revenue segments. The 3D chart made it look messy, unclear. A simple 2D bar chart instantly showed a huge difference that was totally hidden before.
Okay, confession time. I know I'm guilty of this next one. Showing too much data.
It's so common. It often comes from trying to prove, absolutely everything. But if you overload a chart, say, listing every single MLS player's salary visually, you just cause what we call analysis paralysis.
Right, the brain just shuts down.
Exactly. For a busy exec, simplicity is the fastest way to get the insight. Same goes for excessive color. Too many colors are just noise. It's attraction. It pulls you away from the actual signal on the data.
So, stepping back a bit strategically, this really hammers home that critical point. You have to start with the question you need to answer, not with the chart you think looks coolest.
Precisely. And we need to think about the trade-offs between different chart types. It's not just about right or wrong, but what's best for the specific question. For instance, goal. Show one big number. Obvious choice.
Yep.
A KPI.
Yeah.
But here's the insight. An isolated KPI is kind of useless, isn't it? It needs context. You need a date range, a comparison to last period, to a goal, something so the user knows instantly. Should I smile or frown?
Makes sense. Okay, comparing values. You mentioned the bar chart. It feels a bit boring, but...
It's boring because it works.
Yeah.
Comparing values within groups or between them. The good old bar or column chart is usually the most efficient, fastest comprehension.
Oh, okay.
But we can optimize. If you've got a really dense scenario, like comparing a current value against a goal and a target and maybe a benchmark all at once.
Yeah, that sounds complicated.
The bullet chart is amazing for that. It packs all that info really neatly into one visual. A great trade-off for a complex comparison, uses space really well.
Okay, now let's tackle the chart I see misused all the time. The pie chart. For relative composition, right. Part to whole stuff, we're always told, use them sparingly.
Yes, and for good reason. Pie charts are fundamentally tricky for more than a couple of categories because, well, our brains are surprisingly bad at comparing angular distances accurately.
That's not just a design preference.
It's a physiological limitation. So rule of thumb, 2, maybe 3 categories max. If you have a more complex composition, maybe multiple levels, the trade-off shifts. A tree map, those rectangular area charts, becomes way better. Comparing areas is much easier for our brains than comparing angles.
Got it. Area over angles for complexity. What about showing change over time? When do you pick a line chart versus a column chart?
Good question. The key distinction is the nature of the metric itself. Use columns for data that kind of resets or starts at 0 each period. Think daily sales, new website visitors, discrete chunks. Use line charts for data that fluctuates continuously, where one point logically connects to the next, like the size of your inventory backlog, stock prices, temperature over a day, continuous flow.
Okay. And if we're trying to explain relationships or correlations between metrics?
Then you're looking at scatter plots, usually for 2 metrics. Or if you need to bring in a third dimension, bubble charts work well, where the size or maybe the color of the bubble adds that third piece of info.
And we shouldn't forget, sometimes the best visual is no visual.
Exactly. Sometimes when the goal is simply to display details of stack. Many items you need specific customer names, ID numbers, exact figures down to the decimal. The plain old table is still the most effective tool. Don't underestimate it for data integrity and precision when detail matters most.
So thinking about presenting this stuff, the golden rule seems to be intentional simplicity. Use charts, not long paragraphs, for numbers. Keep the design clean, but use color strategically, like red for expenses, green for earnings, to immediately highlight the key takeaway.
Definitely. And this loops right back to our earlier conversation about complexity versus clarity, especially for dashboards, for those high-speed executive summaries. Stay boring with your chart types. Avoid what some people call the xenographic zoo, all sorts of weird, unfamiliar chart types. You're optimizing for maximum understanding, maximum speed, not for showing off your charting repertoire.
Right. Okay, let's apply all this clear communication, data integrity to a really common marketing channel where trust has to be built in real time, the webinar. The big shift here, it seems, is treating it like an interactive conversation, not just a one-way presentation, because the stakes are really high, aren't they?
They absolutely are. The average virtual event, loses a percentage of its audience basically every minute if there isn't some kind of interaction.
Wow, every minute.
We know interaction drives results. Highly engaged attendees, they're about 30% more likely to actually move forward to convert.
So analytics become crucial here.
Totally. Actionable analytics transform your strategy. You have to track key metrics. Session duration, sure. Number of attendees, obviously, but critically, drop-off analysis.
Pinpointing exactly when you lose people.
Exactly. And also chat activity, poll participation. These tell you what's resonating and what's not.
That drop-off analysis feels like the ultimate truth serum for your content.
It really is. It allows for data-driven optimization. Saves time, saves money. For example, if you consistently see drop-offs hitting around the 45-minute mark of your hour-long webinar, maybe the answer is simple. Shorten the format to 30 or 40 minutes. We've seen cases where that leads to a solid 20% jump in attendee retention. You're cutting the fluff, but based on actual audience behavior, not guesswork.
That makes perfect sense.
And beyond that, the engagement data lets you do highly personalized follow-up. This can dramatically boost your conversion potential. You can segment your audience based on how they answered polls or the specific questions they asked in the chat. Imagine creating custom follow-up materials that directly address those hot topics.
Tailored content.
Exactly. We've seen that result in like a 40% increase in post-event engagement because it's directly relevant to them.
And keeping that engagement high during the webinar relies on those visual power-ups. We talked about charts, infographics, videos.
Definitely. They're not just window dressing. They break down complex ideas. They help with memory retention. A picture speaking 1,000 words and all that, and they actively fight off webinar fatigue. Keep people alert.
But the interaction itself needs to be creative, right? Not just click here if you're still awake.
Please, no. Use live polls strategically. Not just for basic checks, but to challenge assumptions. Ask something like, how many of you have tried solution X, the common one, and found it didn't really deliver?
Makes them think.
Or use gamification. Maybe a live leaderboard for participation. Or a collective challenge. Hey, everyone, if we get 200 total interactions in the chat, we'll unlock this exclusive template. That drives specific, measurable activity. And it can actually be fun.
Tying it all together, then.
Yeah, this whole deep dive, it really shows that communication success boils down to intentionality and trust. We started with that creative B2B storytelling GE shifting its identity, right? Then we moved through the absolutely non-negotiable ethics of data honesty. And we saw how both sides, the creative emotional trust and the rational data-driven trust, depend on clear, targeted communication, and crucially, understanding your audience's cognitive limits.
It really does all come back to focusing on clarity over complexity, doesn't it? So thinking about everything we've discussed, the power of ethical visuals, targeted campaigns. Here's something for you to consider. Where in your own communication process are you maybe prioritizing complexity or a bit of flair over fundamental simplicity and clarity? And maybe more immediately, what's one common chart mistake, like those 3D graphics, or starting comparison charts above 0 that you're going to eliminate from your team's reporting, like right now? This deep dive was sponsored by Stonefly, a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. If you're looking for secure, ransomware-proof storage, then Stonefly sells air-gapped and immutable storage. Contact sales at stonefly.com to schedule a demo. We'll catch you next time for the next deep dive.